Thank you. Okay. Go ahead and begin. 15 minutes. Okay, so this shines like the sun, is that a metaphor?
I think there's good reason to think that actually he's painting a picture of what's really going to happen.
Is that a metaphor?
No, it goes back to the glorification. Because when we look at eschatological categories here, we got the saved and the damned. We got the righteous and the unrighteous. We have those who are righteous and those who are lawbreakers. And when we look at this in light of other passages, there's an understanding that in the resurrection that those who are righteous are glorified. And so there's other passages that kind of bear.
So when you put up, thank you, when you put up on the screen the literal, the word fiery furnace and what it literally means, mm-hmm. What would you have done for the literal phrase for shines like the sun?
That was actually not part of the original parable.
It is. It's the explanation. It's right in the explanation. There's no place, the parable, the explanation of the parable begins, mm-hmm. and the explanation ends with those who have ears, let them hear. Wow. And before those who have ears, let them hear, I'm asking you, do you believe that I have to paraphrase this in the form of a question. It's like Power Jeopardy.
Who is the Apostle John?
Yeah, right. Does that line, I mean, we can put it up there, I guess somehow, but does that line, then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father, what would you have put up as the literal meaning that represents? What is that?
Let me answer you from the text. Back in Matthew chapter 13, the parable ends in verse 30. Let me read from verse 29.
Yeah.
But he said, "No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at that time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds, first bind them into the bundles and be burned, and gather the wheat into my barn."
Yeah, another parable.
That's where the parable ends. So the part about the sign shines like the sun, Jesus is elaborating there at the part about the barn. Gather the good stuff and put it in the barn.
So the argument is he gives a parable, mm-hmm. and then he gives a literal explanation until he comes to that line. And when he comes to that line, now he's painting a picture or making a comparison.
No,
is that right?
The picture was the picture.
Is that right or not right? So answer the question.
The picture is the wheat.
I have a few good men running through my head.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'll stop. This is my question. It's my view. Would you agree with my view? You believe that I'm right, that you have violated. I know, but I get to do this. Do you view that I am right? Do you believe that I'm right when I say that you broke your own code that you put up on the screen by saying it was literal explanation and not use a metaphor?
No,
okay,
because
thank you. I know. We both. So we're going to disagree on that. But
yeah, the answer to the question is that I just forgot a metaphor, the wheat in the barn. The answer,
that's not a metaphor.
Yeah,
okay.
Wheat in the barn is the metaphor, and the literal interpretation is that they're gathered into the kingdom and they shine like the sun. It's talking
so they're
about,
literally going to shine like this.
It's talking about the eschaton.
Let me ask you this. If any other place in your life of reading, have you ever seen the construct in English or in Greek of a phrase, shine, they will shine like the sun, that would not be interpreted as a metaphor? Anywhere else?
Yes, it's Moses on Mount Sinai. He spends time with God in the presence of God, and he comes down, and his face is shining like the sun.
Shining like the sun.
And he ends up having to put a veil over his face. That's literal.
You don't think you don't think it meant that he was glowing. You think that it was as if his head had turned into the sun in the sky. That it wasn't a word picture.
It wasn't a word picture.
Okay, then we're done with that. Okay. Of course it's a word picture. That's it.
Why did he cover his face?
Make a statement.
Why did he cover his face?
Chris, it's not your time to ask questions.
Yeah, so is the earth the center of the cosmos?
I'm glad you asked this question because a couple years ago I was sitting at Great Clips waiting in line to get a haircut. And there was a copy of Discover magazine right there sitting on the table, so I picked it up and started flipping through it. And they were talking about Hubble observations, and they had a three-dimensional model of the universe. And ironically, we're kind of in the center of it. So I don't
Do you
know.
believe that the earth is the center of the universe, or the center of the universe?
Based on the Discovery Magazine article, I don't understand the complexities
Do
of
you
that.
believe that the earth revolves around the sun, or
No.
the sun revolves around the
No, the
earth?
sun revolves around, no, the earth revolves
When
around
the earth when the sun stood still,
That's Stephen Furtick's book.
did that happen? did the sun stand still literally, or was that a metaphor?
No, I think it literally stood still. Well, that's a good question. Let me, from the observation of the one on Earth, it looks like the sun stood still.
So is it
So
simply an
possible
observational statement, or did it actually happen?
In that case, it looked like to the observer that the sun stood
Is there a
still.
difference between, in Scripture, the reality and what someone observed?
In what sense? And in context?
Well, is there a difference that something happened? Is the Scripture full of what happened, or is the Scripture full of what people observed? So did the sun actually stand still, or did someone just think it stood still?
From the point of view of the observer, it looked like the sun stood still.
So they thought it did,
Mhm.
but it may not have.
Well, see, again, what's your reference?
That's that story.
Well, in that particular
It seems
case,
odd that you want to
Josh,
answer it. I'll take that. I got that. I wouldn't want to answer that.
you should talk to Stephen Furtick.
No, I'm asking you because it gets to your notion of how Scripture is. Okay, let me ask you this one about the church fathers that I spoke about earlier. You are well studied in the patristic fathers, far more than I am, probably anyone in this room.
That might be an overstatement.
No, I think you know more about the patristic fathers than I do, but I appreciate the fact that you don't think so. You met somebody else in the room knows more. Okay, yeah. Are there any points at which, on things that you determine to be important, that you are not in agreement with all of the patristic and early church fathers?
Of course.
So how do you pick and choose which topics you have right and which topics they have right?
Well, the way I look at it is, let me take Clement of Rome, for instance. In his epistle to the Corinthians, Clement of Rome actually tries to make a distinction between the resurrection, and at that time he believed the legend of the phoenix. That the phoenix was an actual bird. And so he writes about this thing that he's never observed it or seen it. And so in that particular case, you can take a look and say, it sounds like a legend to me. I don't think that, so I disagree with
Yeah,
that.
so he might have a view about the reality, about the legitimacy of the phoenix.
Right.
Anything important about where they came down and said, a church patristic father said, I'm seeing it this way.
For instance,
And you're like, you know what? I'm really talking about it like this.
No, ultimately it comes down to all, me, you, the church fathers, everybody else. We all got to be judged by the word of God. Because listen, I could come up with some crazy ideas.
Like
but
what?
that wouldn't make
Which
it
ones have
true.
you come up with? Which crazy ideas have you come up with that you've talked to people and now you've said, oh boy, I really wish I hadn't taught that to someone? What's an example of that?
Or
is this just that in theory you could come up with crazy ideas but you never actually have?
I have.
Which ones? We have 7 minutes.
No, I'd rather not go down this line. It's rather embarrassing. There was a time when I was a full-blown New Apostolic charismatic and was involved in deliverance and inner healing ministry, and there were some bizarre things that occurred during that. And I thought I was hearing the voice of God, and come to find out that I was really probably just hearing my own digestion.
How do you know that's not what's happening now when you're reading the fathers? How you're understanding them?
Well,
isn't some, like what saved you from that as being not? I'm not saying it happens all the time, but of that being a possibility.
Well, again, if we're going to be talking about things of God, they come back to the point that we need something objective we can hang our hat on. And so myself, you, and even the patristics, they have to be judged against the Word of God.
In what way is the Bible objective? And in what way would you say that the Bible is the cared narrative of a lived people? What makes it objective, in other words?
What makes it objective?
Yeah, you're using a scientist. I made an accusation to you earlier that you're using physical science language for social science in the science world,
right,
for social science material, for which every physical scientist and social scientist that I know of makes a very precise and important distinction. And I feel that you are making physical science kinds of references, empirical objectivism, for in the areas of social science, and no one else that I know of in those fields does that. How is it that that makes sense to you?
Now, to answer your question, during my presupposition speech, I made it clear that what I was doing was employing the tools of the science of historiography.
Yes, but no one, is it not true? Is it not true that in the historicity, in the study of historicity, that no one in that field, broadly speaking, the people in that field do not normally call historicity objective empiricism?
They do consider it to be an objective form of data, but it also has to be, you have to look at it in its context.
There's data,
Yeah.
but the data is not empirical evidence.
Well,
Is that not true?
empirical
Is that not true?
evidence at its core is something that's
But is
data
it
that's
not
observed.
I
That's
understand
the
that.
definition.
I understand that, but is it not true that that's not the language set used, and you borrowed from another tradition to bring it into the explanation here?
Sure, why not?
Well, no, not sure why not. Do you know you do that on purpose?
Because I'm passive aggressive, I'm sure.
No, but do you do it on purpose?
No.
Okay.
And there's no malicious intent in it.
No, but when you break, when you claim a storyline, and then don't follow that storyline, and then claim an objectivity that does not come from that form of study, does that feel to you as if you're doing something inappropriate by claiming objectivism through subjective lines of inquiry?
Now, inappropriate, it would imply that there's some kind of malicious intent.
Yeah, do you feel it's inappropriate?
No,
Okay,
absolutely no.
that's what I was getting at. So I don't think,
You were inconsistent. You called me saying I was being flippant regarding
Oh, I
God.
know.
You were kind of flippant about God at the end of your result. I mean,
Yeah, but
I call you on flippancy, and so what's the standard here?
well, that one doesn't fear God in my world. So one can be rather pleasant about God. One can't be so. I'm answering a question. Stop me, moderator.
I
Stop
tricked
me
you.
before I say something I don't want to say.
I use my
This is what you do with your fancy postmodern words, where parable doesn't mean parable, and where metaphor doesn't mean metaphor. Literal doesn't mean literal, and where objectivism doesn't mean objectivism, and where empiricism does not mean empiricism. And I have to say to you, does it at all tinge you at all that I have this view of you? Does it, this is a really tricky question. Does it feel strange to you that I say, I think you are doing with language something inconsistent to your own system? So you're using words to mean something that in the rest of tradition, they don't mean those things.
What?
Parable and metaphor and literalism and metaphor and empiricism and historicity.
And which part of this question am I supposed to answer? Let me try to.
Does it bother you? Does it twinge you at all? Does it make you think, God, Doug, you might be right about that?
No.
Stunning.
Stunning.
I figured that was going to fall off with a question.
Okay. No, I'm done. Completely out of control.
All right, if you guys want to take your seats
Sure.
again, hopefully.